Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. So glad you're joining us today because, honestly, we've got an absolutely wild, deeply personal story to get into. We're unpacking a first-hand account of someone escaping a high-control religious system and their journey to finding actual, genuine grace. I mean, think about it. What do you do when everything you've ever been taught is rooted in pure fear? When simply leaving your community means you're told you are eternally condemned? How on earth do you start rebuilding your spiritual life from scratch? Today, we're going to break down this incredible story and pull out some really actionable insights for navigating massive life transitions with newfound faith.
Just listen to this quote for a second. I would rather not be Amish and go to hell than be Amish and go to heaven. Wow. Talk about intense emotional stakes, right? This striking quote comes directly from our source material, spoken by a woman looking back at the exact moment she decided to leave her old order community. I think it perfectly captures the deep-seated terror people experience when breaking away from a controlling group. She wasn't leaving with this warm, fuzzy sense of hope. No, she genuinely believed she was choosing damnation, just to escape the rigid, suffocating environment she grew up in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. Overcoming deep-seated religious fear. 2. Finding independence and grace. 3. Seeking scripture for spiritual truth. 4. Building a supportive faith community. And 5. Applying faith in life transitions. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Overcoming deep-seated religious fear. It's really fascinating to see these two completely different spiritual worlds side by side. On the left, you've got fear-based religion. In the source, the speaker talks about growing up super religious but having zero actual relationship with God. It was a culture where kids are basically taught that faith means you have to be serious 24/7 and that having any kind of fun is literally a sin. But then, look over at the right side, personal relationship. Leaving all that fear behind takes a massive perspective shift. It's about discovering that true faith is actually filled with grace and joy, and it's built on solid biblical truth rather than just suffocating guilt.
So, to really understand this, we have to look at the exact logic that traps people in this kind of fear. The source explains that the ultimate threat weaponized against young people is the commandment to obey your parents. See, in this high-control system, obedience to human parents is elevated above literally everything else. So the formula is terrifyingly simple. Leaving the community equals disobeying your parents, and disobeying your parents automatically equals going to hell. Boom. That's the massive psychological wall people have to break through just to take their very first step toward freedom.
Which brings us to Section 2, Finding Independence and Grace.
Let's map this journey out, because as we all know, life transitions absolutely do not happen overnight. Day 1, that was leaving the community and fully believing she was condemned. Then, for the next 2 years, she describes living this completely directionless, modern life up in Minnesota. She was away from the strict rules, sure, but she hadn't found a compass yet. But then, a massive pivot. Over the course of just 4 weeks, she packed up and relocated all the way down to Texas with the help of relatives, specifically to break away from her immediate family's control. By year 3, that geographical distance and emotional independence finally gave her the space to discover true faith and eventually get married. It just goes to show, finding solid ground usually involves a pretty messy period of trial and error.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real meaning of grace during those messy seasons. Look at this definition: the unmerited favor and protection of God. Our source looks back at those 2 directionless years in Minnesota and realizes something incredible. Even while she was living in rebellion and completely ignoring anything spiritual, God was actively protecting her from situations that could have totally ruined her life. Relying on grace instead of guilt means recognizing you're loved and watched over, even when you're running in the opposite direction.
Now, a huge breakthrough happened during this whole transition. In her old community, she was essentially taught that if adults want to help you, it's just a trick. They ultimately want to control you. Because of that, she was super prideful and hated accepting help. But moving to Texas with a relative completely shattered that mindset. She realized that accepting help doesn't have to mean accepting human control. Sometimes, to find a safe space to grow, you actually have to let your guard down and trust the right people.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Seeking Scripture for Spiritual Truth. We absolutely have to talk about Grandma. This is such a deeply emotional anecdote from the source. Her grandmother was entirely shunned by her community, simply because she claimed to be saved and dared to read scripture for herself. The community literally treated her like she was misled or mentally ill, and yet she was the most devout Christian our speaker had ever known. Grandma's legacy was one of just persistent, loving prayer that her grandkids would someday find the truth outside that rigid system. It perfectly highlights the power of seeking truth directly, even when an entire religious institution is standing against you.
This right here is why knowing scripture for yourself is an absolute game changer when life gets hard. On the left side, the source talks about these really troubling human traditions she grew up with. Like there was this superstitious ritual called pain pulling, where community members supposedly tried to physically pull the pain out of a dying person into their own bodies. I mean, it's a practice she now views as completely unbiblical and spiritually dark. But look at the right side. Instead of relying on confusing or weird traditions of men, you have scriptural truth. When you get your answers straight from scripture, you're building a sustainable foundation based on peace, not superstition.
Which leads us to section 4, building a supportive faith community.
Okay, so you've left the toxic system. Now what? Well, you can't do it alone. Here is a direct checklist from the source material for evaluating and building your own grace-filled community. Number 1, don't do life alone. Number 2, seek out genuine believers. Number 3, and this is big, ask hard questions. Nobody should commit to a faith blindly. Number 4, note the tree by its fruit. And 5 kind of goes with it, ensure a community's actions actually align with the Bible. If a group claims to follow God, but the way they treat people doesn't match up, run. And finally, number 6, always trust God over the institution.
This next quote, it hits incredibly hard. Apparently, you are believing in the church and not in God. People will always stumble. The speaker brings this up to address people who walk away from faith entirely just because a specific church or congregation hurt them. And it drives home a crucial lesson for us all. A healthy faith relies on God, not on the flawless performance of humans. Because let's face it, humans will let you down. If your faith shatters the second a person makes a mistake, your foundation was definitely in the wrong place to begin with.
Finally, let's wrap this up with section 5, applying faith in life transitions.
So how do we actively live this out? The source gives us these 4 simple but honestly profound daily habits to keep you anchored when everything around you is changing. First, read the Bible to find truth for yourself. Bypass the outside noise. Second, be willing to actually change your perspective when you learn something new. Actually let yourself grow. Third, pray constantly. Just keep that conversation going. And fourth, thank God, even when it's hard, even when you don't think you have a single thing to be thankful for. Cultivating gratitude during a tough transition actively replaces that anxiety and deep-seated fear with a steady, personal faith.
To tie this all together, there's this really powerful physical metaphor from the source. The speaker talks about trying to put on her traditional Amish clothes, the specific dresses, the little half-inch wide ties, years after she originally left. At first, suffocating panic. She felt entirely trapped all over again. But eventually, after seeking scripture, finding a good community, and really leaning into grace, she reached a place of massive healing. She says she can now put those clothes on, walk right into her parents' home without a single ounce of fear. The clothes are just clothes now. They don't mean she's trapped. It's beautiful, really. It proves that true spiritual healing lets you face your past without letting it control you. What an unbelievable journey, right? Going from sheer, suffocating terror to profound peace. It just proves that replacing a rigid system of rules with a genuine, grace-filled relationship can completely rewrite your future. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on today. What controlling systems in your own life do you need to leave behind to discover your own personal truth and grace? Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer. Keep seeking the truth, trust the process, and hey, never be afraid to ask the hard questions.